What if I told you that the man who once bragged about being the sharpest dressed hustler in Huntsville is now rocking a very different kind of uniform? One with handcuffs to match. Yeah, you heard me right. Martell Holt, the so-called reality TV mogul, wine king and neighborhood entrepreneur, just got scooped up by the feds like he was on clearance at a Black Friday sale. But here's the real question. How did we get from love and marriage Huntsville to love and marriage and federal lockup? How do you go from sipping champagne on camera to sipping tap water in a holding cell? Folks, this isn't just another celebrity meltdown. This is a full-blown FBI special, complete with flashing lights, dramatic takedowns, and whispers about crimes that make your jaw drop. And before you say, wait, is this even real? Let me remind you, in the world of Martell Holt, reality is always stranger than fiction. Was it greed? Was it arrogance? Or was it the universe finally cashing in on years of drama and scandal? Tonight, we're diving into the arrest that has social media on fire. And trust me, you've never heard the Martell Holt story told like this. Let's set the stage properly, because this story does not just start with flashing red and blue lights outside a crime scene. It begins years back with a man who was addicted to the spotlight more than to any kind of responsibility, and that man is Martell Holt, the reality TV golden boy who turned himself into a one-man scandal factory. A guy who strutted across TV screens on Love and Marriage Huntsville, acting like he was the poster child of success, while his personal choices were slowly building the kind of bonfire that was eventually going to explode into smoke everyone could see. And here we are, smoke everywhere, no filters, no editing. Just the raw mess that has his name plastered across headlines. He loved to wear the designer suits. He loved to pull up in cars shinier than his future, and he loved to talk smooth, telling Instagram live audiences that he was a king, a provider, a businessman with vision. When behind those lines, there was chaos brewing. Lawsuits, accusations, broken relationships, and the kind of shady dealings that always seem to follow men who want fame faster than they want growth. People thought he was unstoppable, that he would always land on his feet because of charm and charisma. But charm is like cheap cologne. It fades fast, and once it's gone, you are left with the real smell of what was hiding underneath. And Martell's truth is not exactly rose petals. His controversies were always lined up like dominoes, waiting for a push. From cheating scandals that played out on national television to business ventures that collapsed faster than they were announced. And yet, somehow he walked around as if the rules of accountability did not apply to him. And now, the moment that no one thought would come so soon, federal agents stepping in, lights flashing. A man once celebrated, now in handcuffs. The irony writing itself, because the same reality star who used to smile into cameras now has his mugshot stored in the system like any other defendant. But you cannot understand this downfall unless you look back at the trail he left. The whispers of investors who claimed their money disappeared, the ex-partners who accused him of manipulation, the families who said his charm was a mask, and the courtrooms that slowly turned those whispers into testimony. To the public, it looked like messy celebrity gossip. But if you talk to people behind the scenes, they will tell you Martell loved to play big and spend big. And when the money dried up, he played even bigger with deals that made less and less sense. Anonymous sources. And you know the type who only talk when they know the man has fallen. Whispered about shady contracts, about backdoor deals, about favors promised but never delivered. They painted a picture of a man who could not separate his reality TV persona from real life. A man who thought life worked like a storyline that could be edited, reshot, and spun to look better than it really was. The truth is, you cannot edit court documents. You cannot reshoot police records. And you cannot spin the sound of handcuffs closing. The public, of course, is eating this up. Social media catching fire with memes, with comments like reality check for a reality star and from red carpets to red alerts, while his most diehard supporters post on his Instagram telling him to stay strong, saying the system always targets successful black men, trying to flip the narrative that this is somehow proof of bias rather than proof of a long chain of bad choices finally catching up. And that's what makes this scandal different. It is not just messy gossip about a cheating storyline. It is not just an argument with co-stars. It is not just an embarrassing clip on television. This time it is legal. This time it is federal. This time it is about power, money, and the abuse of both. And as the sirens faded that night and the crowd of bystanders realized what they had witnessed, the reality hit that this was not just another Martell headline that would pass in a week. This was the turning point, the scene that would define how the world remembers him. Because after years of acting like the rules did not apply, the rules finally came knocking, and they brought badges, cameras, and the full weight of a justice system that is not interested in charisma, not interested in excuses, and certainly not interested in a reality TV storyline. The arrest itself is only the surface because the real story is buried inside the kind of details that make conspiracy theorists lick their lips and gossip. Bloggers stay awake all night digging for scraps. And what is coming out now is the kind of twisted plot that feels like it should belong to a streaming drama instead of real life. Yet here we are watching Martell Holt's name attached to reports that sound wilder each day, according to so-called leaked documents and insiders who suddenly have very loud voices. Investigators have been tracking a trail of questionable deals, unreported cash flows, and lavish spending that raised eyebrows long before the flashing lights of his arrest. And while the official line says little, the whispers say everything. They say he was moving money through shell companies. They say luxury cars were purchased under other people's names. They say properties popped up without clear financing. And they say Martell was living bigger than his actual income could possibly justify. The man who once bragged about being a self-made entrepreneur was apparently making himself out of other people's pockets. And those pockets are now talking, with supposed victims claiming they were promised high returns and left with nothing but screenshots of text messages that now serve as evidence of a hustle wrapped in a bow. Imagine the irony, a man who played the role of successful businessman on camera actually playing the part of conman off camera. A man who preached about growth while digging financial holes so deep the only way out was through more lies and more schemes. The drama has gotten so juicy that anonymous sources are claiming federal agents have seized boxes of documents, laptops filled with emails, and even voice recordings where Martell allegedly bragged about beating the system. Bragged about how charm and timing could let him slide past scrutiny. Bragged about how fame was his shield. If that is true, then the shield has cracked and all that bravado has aged worse than expired milk. Social media is having a field day. Half the internet roasting him like a comedy special, and the other half spinning wild theories that this is part of some bigger takedown, with tweets saying things like maybe Martell knows too much, maybe he crossed the wrong people, maybe the government wanted to make an example out of him. Meanwhile, gossip sites are reporting that even people close to him, former friends and business partners, have quietly cut ties, unfollowed him online, and started feeding little pieces of information to whoever will listen. And then you have the fans who insist it is all a setup. The same fans who say every scandal is a plot against a successful man. The same fans who ignore the paper trails, the testimonies, and the fact that law enforcement does not usually waste time on reality stars unless they actually have something solid in hand. And the thing about this scandal is that it is not just about Martell as a man. It is about what he represents, the glossy facade of fame, the illusion that success on TV equals success in real life. The danger of believing your own hype until you start writing checks reality cannot cash. Every detail that leaks makes the whole story look like a house of cards built for cameras but collapsing under the weight of evidence, and every comment from the public makes it clear that Martell Holt is not just fighting a legal battle, but a battle in the court of opinion, where every meme, every blog post, and every podcast episode becomes another nail in the coffin of his reputation. And when you step back and look at the bigger picture, it feels less like a sudden fall and more like an inevitable collision with consequences that have been waiting in the shadows for years. The only surprise being that it took this long for the lights to catch up with him. The fallout from all this is like watching a domino chain crash in slow motion because once the arrest made headlines, it was no longer just about Martell as a man, but about the ripple effects hitting every part of his world, from his TV career to his family, to his bank accounts and future prospects. And nothing in that chain looks like it can be saved. Networks that once milked his drama for ratings are now quietly pulling back because sponsors do not want to be tied to domestic violence charges, fraud whispers, and federal raids. And while reality TV thrives on scandal, there is a line where the drama stops being entertaining and starts being radioactive. And Martell has sprinted across that line with handcuffs on. Producers know audiences love messy storylines, but they also know advertisers hate the stink of real criminal investigations, and that puts Martell in a position where even the one platform that made him a household name may not want him back. Not even as the villain of the season. The business side is just as grim because investors are allergic to bad publicity, and nobody with serious money wants to tie their brand to a man trending for mugshots and courtroom dates. So projects he once bragged about, from wine brands to construction ventures, suddenly look like abandoned shells, and the cash flow problems only get worse when you add the mountain of legal fees that come with fighting the system and losing appeals. But the heaviest weight might be on his family, because no matter how carefully you try to protect kids from the spotlight, when their father is splashed across the internet with headlines about violence, fraud, and federal arrests, the shadow follows them to school, to friends' houses. To every Google search of the last name Holt, custody battles become messier, co-parenting becomes harder, and the public judgment bleeds into private lives in ways that never fully heal, especially when the official record will forever show he appealed, he lost, and he refused to accept responsibility. Meanwhile, public opinion is splitting wider than ever, with critics using him as a poster boy for the idea that fame cannot save you from accountability, while diehard defenders still frame him as a victim of a system stacked against men like him, repeating that narrative even when the evidence is loud and clear. What nobody can deny is that his reputation is scarred beyond repair, because this is no longer rumor or tabloid fodder. This is a documented legal history, stamped with court decisions and federal signatures. And that stamp will appear every time someone searches his name, every time a business partner considers a deal, every time a producer considers a casting choice. Even if Martell wanted to reinvent himself, the internet does not forget, and the record is permanent. And that makes rebuilding almost impossible. Some critics argue his story is a cultural cautionary tale, proof that no amount of charisma or reality TV editing can cover up abuse, arrogance, and recklessness forever, while his supporters counter that he is a casualty of a justice system eager to take down successful men. But whether you see him as symbol or scapegoat, the fact remains that Martell Holt is no longer just a reality star. He is a headline, a case study, and an example that will be brought up in conversations about accountability for years to come. His future is now a giant question mark, because at 45 years old, he is not facing another season of TV drama. He is facing the consequences of choices that have caught up and locked him in a narrative he cannot control. And no amount of charm, excuses, or spin can undo the reality that the law has spoken and the world has heard it. So here we are at the end of a story that feels less like a reality TV episode and more like a cautionary tale written in bold letters. And the question now is not what Martell Holt did or did not do, because the evidence, the rulings, and the headlines have already spoken. The real question is, what do you think about it? Do you see this as the justice system finally showing that fame and charm cannot keep someone safe forever? Or do you think this is another case of a man being dragged harder because of who he is and how the world views him? Do you think Martell can ever rebuild his reputation? Or is this the kind of permanent stain that makes every future move crumble before it even begins? I want to hear your thoughts, your theories, your takes, because this is not just Martell's story. It is now part of a bigger conversation about power, image, and accountability in the world of fame. Drop your comments below. Tell me if you think this is the end or just the beginning of another messy chapter. And if you want the unfiltered truth, Make sure you like, subscribe, and stay tuned.